I'm Brian Christner, and this is The Byte, a bite-sized podcast about containers, cloud, and tech.
Today, we're going to talk about K3S, K3s or K3s, or however you want to call it. It's so new, we haven't even coined the term yet, so it's open for discussion. If you don't know what K3s is, it's the new Kubernetes distribution by Rancher Labs. Rancher has done an amazing job and taken K8s, or Kubernetes, and subtracted 5 and made it K3s, obviously. But their take on this distribution is not adding more features, but taking away. And Kubernetes is, by default, a massive beast, and it's getting more and more complex to manage. And what Rancher is doing is trying to slim it down and make the edge case, or actually the use cases, more specific. Kelsie Hightower actually chimed in on this on Twitter, and he said he really likes how Rancher is taking a new look at running in low resource computing environments by removing features and not adding features. And when I talk about removing features, K3s is actually removing legacy and non-default features. So there's a lot of stuff hanging out there that we just don't need, right? So they remove a lot of these things. Alpha features, if you're an alpha tester, that's great, but in production, we don't really need it, or for IoT and edge. Also, they're removing Docker. So they're opted to use Containerd, which is lighter weight. We don't need all these commands in there. And when we remove all these components, we actually make the K3's binary only 40 megabytes. That's right, 40 megabytes. Now, when K3s is running, it only requires 512 megabytes of RAM. Now, think about that for a second. A full Kubernetes distribution that is running with 512 megabytes of RAM. This is amazing. Now, you can already envision use cases for this for like edge, computing edge, cloud edge, IoT, Raspberry Pi. So this is actually optimized for Raspberry Pi, which is great. And we're going to start building our own Raspberry Pi cluster for K3s and start playing around with it and exploring some of the IoT and edge cases with it, because it's so lightweight. It's so easy to use. I mean, you basically take 2 commands to get this going. You basically download the binary and then you go K3s start. You just get it up and running and you're going. It's that easy. So it's a new take on how we're going to look at Kubernetes by taking things away, specifying exactly the use case. In this case, we want to optimize Kubernetes as much as possible. And the next thing, we want to really make this just a resource. We want to look at this from a totally different aspect. We don't want to look at it from all the huge SIGs and things like this. We want to specify that we just want a small Kubernetes cluster running that we can actually interact with and put a couple workloads on. Now, Rancher sees this as an opportunity for some of their customers. I guess they've been asked by their customers, mostly in the retail and telco spaces, to come up with some lightweight options that they can run at the edge. And retail operations, they say they want these retail operators are asking, hey, we would like to run a small Kubernetes cluster in every retail store we have, just to run some jobs and some edge cases. So they don't need a giant Kubernetes cluster running at every store. They just want something small to run a couple processes. Same thing with telcos. They want it at the edge to do some of their edge processing. So this is brilliant. Now, taking all this into consideration, Rancher was able to certify and make this a fully compliant Kubernetes distribution. So this is actually on CNCF. When you look at Kubernetes distributions, K3s is already there. I mean, it's unbelievable in this short amount of time that it was only released about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, already has 4,700 stars on GitHub, and it's increasing in popularity. From our aspect, we see tons of use cases for our customer because we're focusing on IoT. We're looking at some of the use cases around edge. So as we go forward, I'll let you know how it goes, because we're starting to use this and explore some of the possibilities here. But it excites us how small this is, how really it doesn't take a lot of resources. However, I can still run it on a giant Amazon instance if I want. But the idea is I want something small. I don't want this giant beast. And it's really looking at it from like a Docker aspect. I want to install Docker and I want all the components and I want it just to be lightweight and running. It's a great take. I'm interested to see where the project goes. If you are using it or have any feedback, please let us know because we'd love to hear about what you're doing with K3s. And we'll keep you posted on what we're going to do. That's all for today. Go check out K3s, K3S.io. I'll put it in the show notes. If not, we'll have a good day and we'll see you next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Byte. You can find the show notes at thebyte.io and follow me on Twitter at IDoMyOwnTricks.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.